Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
My dog went flying through the air over the tree. I don't know how it did it.
Okay.
So here we go. It is a Bigfoot kind of night. First comes behind door number 1, Ron Morehead. Now, Ron is an author, adventurer, and renowned researcher. He has traveled the world doing research of the unexplained, undiscovered, underexplored for 40 years. His research includes the scientific study of Bigfoot evidence, the possibility of connections between Bigfoot and the skeletons found in Peru and Bolivia, the Lovelock Cave, and the Minaret Skull as well. He is recognized around the globe for the best Sasquatch audio recordings known as the Sierra Sounds. With over 35 years' experience in foreign languages and linguistics, including the collection, transcription, analysis, and reporting of voice communications. He is a 2-time graduate, I think. Hello, Scott.
Yes.
Okay, good. And
hello,
now, before we get started, behind... all right, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ooh, sorry. Couldn't resist. So I'm not sure where to start. I have 2, bios and sets of questions here that look a lot alike, so we'll do it that way. Let us begin with Ron, and the question is, Ron, what is it, 40 years in this now?
Since 1971, so I guess it'd be more like 44 years.
Why?
Well, it gets under your skin. I with some other hunters encountered these creatures in a remote area of the Sierras, and they started interacting with us, and we were fortunate enough to record their vocalizations, and thus the Sierra Sounds, which a lot of people have heard. They've been studied, and anyway, it got me involved in it, and ever since then I've been trying to figure out what it was all about and what giants are all about, because these things are huge.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me ask this. Were you actually looking for Bigfoot?
No, I wasn't. No, not at all. One of the hunters, original hunters up there, there's 6 of us involved that had this thing going on, and off the mountain, he wouldn't go back, and that's how I got involved, actually, because the wives were worried because the men hadn't came back, and they heard the story of what was going on up there, and they wanted him to go back and see if guys were okay, because we didn't know what was dealing with. They didn't know what they was dealing with. So he invited me to go with him. I was a friend of the family's anyway, so I got up there, and that kind of got me part of the group. That was 71, and so that's when I seen my first huge track, and that's when I got involved.
Okay, you've seen a huge track. Have you actually seen a Bigfoot ever?
I did. Yes, I did. Me and another gentleman one night. They're very stealthy creatures, so it's very unusual, but they did interact with us 3 years after 71 in 1974, and I got to see them, at least one of them, jumping between trees, going so fast, and at that time they were making their sounds too, so that's one of the first times you got to see what was making the sounds we had been recording.
All right, and that's the final question I've got for you before I move on to Scott for a second. And how did you record? I've got, 7 sounds I'm going to be playing, I think, tonight, and I'm wondering how you got them.
Well, we recorded them with cassette recorders. That's all we had in the 70s, and I had some really good quality, a really good quality portable cassette. Unfortunately, all my tapes burned up in a house fire in 76, but Al Berry, an investigative reporter that we allowed to come in 1972, recorded them also, and he fostered some studies, which we can get into later, but we all used cassettes in those days. And
may I ask one more? How do you get close enough to a Bigfoot to record the sounds. And, I've heard some of them, and they're very clear. I suppose you have to amplify them and so forth, but I would think you'd need to be here pretty close to get something this good.
Well, it's not something we go out and try to do. It's something they come in and just allowed it. We had the mic, Alberry had his mic remoted up behind our shelter about 40 feet, and they came in just close to it. And that's how he got those real clear recordings.
Okay, that makes all sense in the world. And for many years, you suffered in having these sounds, but not having a clue what they meant, right?
Correct. Didn't know what they meant. We thought between ourselves that they were communicating with each other, and later on trying to communicate with us. Okay. But again, we're not qualified as a linguist or anybody. A lot of people say they know what they're saying, but that doesn't mean a thing to me unless you're qualified. If you don't have the credentials behind your name, it doesn't mean anything. So Al Berry taught me that. He had a couple master's degree in science and also in English, and he was a writer, and he's deceased now, but he was the investigative reporter that we took in, and he said you got to have the credibility behind it. So he fostered studies and fostered the main study at the University of Wyoming, which lasted 1 year, by Professor Curlin. And that was a huge step for us because he established that the tapes were credible, that they were made at the time of recording. They weren't pre-made with a 60-cycle hum in a studio and transported up there. They were genuine. He showed that they weren't speeded up or slowed down, and all those things were important.
Oh, yes.
He gave that to a symposium up in British Columbia in 1978. And his report was written up into a book that they ended up publishing. So that was good, and it wasn't until our next guest, my good friend Scott Nelson, came along in 2008, and we tried, Al Berry and I tried for years to get some university that had the credibility to take these on again and tell us more, because what Curlin did was just establish the quality of the tapes, and the authenticity of the tapes were genuine.
All right. So now Scott
Yes.
is a crypto-linguist. That's the first time I've ever heard that expression. What in the world is a crypto-linguist?
Well, I had a career in the Navy as what is officially called a cryptologic technician interpreter.
Okay.
And I was trained in the analysis and reporting and voice transcription in 2 languages, and had to learn, on the job, Persian.
Wow.
But, that's what we do for a living, is listen to the human voice on tape.
Okay, so I'm not sure how the two of you actually came together, but I will ask this. When you first heard these sounds that Ron had come up with, did you immediately hear coherence in them, or did you go, come on, or let me listen more closely, or what was your reaction?
Well, when I first stumbled upon them with my son, and we were just kind of Googling information for a report he had to do, and I stumbled upon these sounds on a website, and upon the first run through, I heard something that I had to hear again, so I went back over it, and I went back over it, and I went back over it, and my son finally said, "Dad, snap out of it. What are you doing?" I said, "Stephen, this is not a human being on these tapes, yet they are speaking a language." And my son said, "What are you talking about, Dad? It sounds like coyotes or apes fighting."
Right.
I said, "I know it does, son, but there's language here. What you have to do in order to hear it is slow it down like Dad used to do in the Navy." So I said, "We've got to get a hold of these tapes." So through a little bit of detective work, I got a hold of Ron, and within several days, Ron had all 3 of the tapes to me.
And you listened to them for how long before you began to realize that you were actually hearing a language?
Oh, I could tell right away.
Really?
I could tell right away. Oh, yeah. absolutely. And I think it was probably because of how many hundreds into the thousands of hours I spent listening to the human voice on tape, speeding the tapes up, slowing them down.
Sure.
Just hearing, that's why I immediately recognized, even with the rapid delivery that these vocalizations are given at, I could tell that if you slowed them down, you would hear articulated phonemes exactly like humans do.
All right. I know I'm getting way ahead of myself, but the next question for you is, if you recognize it as a language, can you then give meaning to what we're going to hear?
No. Not
yet.
Not in a translation. We're way ahead of ourselves.
I would imagine. Okay, given's got more examples, or even many examples of sounds.
Yes.
Would that give you the key you need, or the mass you need to decipher?
We would hope. Yes, we would hope that eventually we would be able to decipher. But our greatest hope would be to actually eventually sit down and have a conversation, because that's really the only way to truly verify the meaning of what we would call words, sentences, etc., is to sit down with the speaker and to verify the meanings of each and every morpheme. So
right.
Yeah, we're way ahead of ourselves there.
I would assume
yes, you would have to.
You would need to, for example, observe a Bigfoot. Even if you didn't have a conversation with him, you would observe him doing something, and there would be a sound attached to that something, and you would slowly begin to put meanings together, or what?
Right. Yes, that would work.
Okay.
That would work.
Well, extended observation of a Bigfoot, Ron, I take it, is not likely anytime soon.
Extended observation?
Yes.
Well, Scott and I have been up there. We're trying to get more, we were trying to get more cooperative sounds for him, but they're very elusive and they're very, sensitive to the human exploitation of them. And it just hasn't worked out yet that we're able to record them again. Sometimes you'll hear them, but you're not walking around with your recorder on all the time, and it's just it's a battle or I shouldn't say a battle. It's just a ongoing quest, I guess, to get that. But that hasn't been what I've been trying to do so much. That's what Scott, I think, has been wanting to do. We've spent quite a bit of time up there, 2009 on to 2011, I guess it was. But it's never able to capture the sounds that, like we did in the 70s. I've heard them, as he may have also, but again, run around with your tape recorder on all the time, and just, I don't know, these things are, there's an enigma associated with these, which we can get into, but I think they're a lot more intelligent than what we gave them credit for in the 70s. We underestimated what we were dealing with at the time, and it's been an ongoing adventure for me, is trying to find out just what they were all about, trying to connect the dots, so to speak, and what they might be.
All right, well, a lot of people in the audience, not a lot, I would say you've got a more friendly audience than you would have nearly anywhere else, but even some in this audience would say, oh, come on, Bigfoot, how do we prove there really is such an animal? Such a mammal? I guess he would be a mammal, certainly. So, best evidence. Either one of you.
The best evidence is the sounds we have. First of all, I don't try to prove that to anybody, because the facts are going to present and prove themselves. The Patterson film of 1967 is pretty much accepted now. A lot of people have tried to debunk it and all, but I know Bob Gimlin quite well, who was there, and I just believe he's a trustworthy person in my eyes. And our sounds, because the Patterson film shows the animal walking across a place in Bluff Creek, but our sounds kind of give you more of an insight into the nature of these creatures. And as you can see, or as you will see when we play the sounds, that they go from a very antagonistic sound, which I think they were trying to scare us out, into a more of a communicative type attitude.
Actually, that was the next thing I was going to ask Scott, and that is, if you cannot translate for us what we're going to hear, and obviously you cannot, can you, no matter what language you're speaking, there are certain things that come through, certain emotions that come through.
Of course.
Right? And that
absolutely.
You can speak to, I take it.
Oh, absolutely. You can hear all of the, virtually all of the emotions with both the Barry tape and the Morehead tape together. You can hear the whole spectrum of emotions from one point where it even sounds like one of them is making a joke and laughing at his own joke.
Really?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And then you've got aggression, you've got anger, you've got concern, you've got inquiry inflection, you've got response inflection, you name it. You've got virtually all of the characteristics of human language are evident in the Barry Morehead tapes.
Okay. Let me try this question. We'll get to sounds after the break at the bottom of the hour, but I had a lady on recently who has been living with, she claims, Bigfoot for quite some time in her area. I guess he picked, this is down in East Texas, actually, and she swore that she once saw a Bigfoot wearing a human shirt, trying to wear a human shirt. Is there any chance that could be true, that a Bigfoot would choose to try that after observing humans?
Well, that's a good cry. I don't think any of ours wore clothes up there, but it's possible. I've heard those stories before that, the smaller ones might try to
emulate
some clothes on. I've had that question asked of me before. It's just, it seems very unusual, or maybe they're just they toy with humans. I think they think that we think we're smarter than them, and we do, but we're not. In my opinion, these things are out there, and there's a higher connection than most people want to give credit for them.
Well, pretty much we're looking for them pretty hard, even with infrared, down-looking infrared, whatever, heat signature stuff, and we don't find the Bigfoot, so... Oh, gosh. So we actually have Bigfoot sounds, all kidding aside. You don't often get a crypto-linguist on the air, along with a Bigfoot researcher with sounds, to actually talk about them. That's pretty cool. I would obviously like to play one. I guess we would call this number one. And if that's okay with you, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I may play it actually twice, just so or even more than that, you never know. Let's play it once, and then we will talk about it. So here it comes, I think. Ready? Good Lord. I had no idea what was coming. Holy mackerel, guys. I don't know what to say about that. My God. All right. So I don't know anything about it. I've got the experts. Ron, if you would please, that particular recording, good heavens, where did that come from?
Our Sierra camp, 8 miles in the wilderness of the Sierra Nevada mountains. We were recording these creatures. It was pretty intimidating to start with there, and as you might have guessed, when these things were pretty close to us, too, right outside our shelter quite often. And anyway...
if I heard that was clear, and it was, plenty ambiguous, I guess, but very, very clear, and it sounded like it was very, very close, and if I was there recording that, it would scare the hell out of me.
Well, that's how I got involved. One of the guys wouldn't go back up there.
Don't blame him.
He wouldn't go back by himself, I should say, and he hadn't been back since that I know of.
Don't blame him.
Pretty frightening. Very religious man. He didn't know where to put this with his religious structure, because it just didn't fit in his paradigm. But
I don't have much of a religious structure, and I don't know where to put it, and I'd be running. So, I am kind of. First of all, what were we hearing? Is it one Bigfoot, or is it two of them, or what?
Well, we believe it was two, but let Scott jump in on this one.
Okay, Scott, that was a lot to decipher.
Oh, yeah, and like I said before, we're far from actually deciphering it or translating it, but what we can do with that is point out the characteristics of language that are evident in those utterances. And what you have there is obviously a male. And when you slow it down, you can really hear it. You don't have to be a PhD in linguistics specialist to hear the language.
All right, that is not slowed down. I'm sorry to interrupt. That is regular speed, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But when you slow it down, especially, if you listen to it long enough, even the layman can hear that you have a female and a male having discourse, conversational turns where they take turns in speaking to each other.
I agree.
So you listen to it enough, you can hear it even at real time. You don't have to slow it down. But slowing it down makes it very evident to anybody that's ever sat through our presentation and listened to it, walks away knowing that they're listening to a language.
I've got to agree. It sounded like a language to me.
By the way, years ago we had a human sound expert listen to it, a very qualified person, and she said the female won that argument. Just to throw that out.
So in other words, the worlds are similar in some ways.
Yes, they are.
We're going to listen to this again, and Scott, as we do listen again, what should we be listening for to try and make a little sense out of this? I mean, not that we'll understand it, but I mean, is it a fight?
It sounds like that to us. It sounds like that they're at least in a higher state of agitation. But then again, the more you listen to it, the more it begins to sound like a married couple.
During
just in a regular conversation.
For a married couple, yes. You can hear a human say something.
That was Warren Johnson, who was basically the oracle up there for us until he passed away, or unless he wasn't there and I was, then I would be the one that would call out to them, or we tried to entice them. We at first we were intimidated by it because of the sounds are pretty intimidating. But after a while, you realize they weren't going to break through the shelter at us, and they knew we wasn't going to shoot at them. We all had guns. We're hunters, a hunting camp. And so that was Warren Johnson, and he was just yelling out at him.
Ron?
He said, that's not very nice.
You said you had a gun, right?
Yes, we have guns.
If you were able to take a bead on a Bigfoot and choose to either pull the trigger or not, what would you do?
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
No. No, there are more to them than that, and I think if you had that aura about you, I don't think we'd had the encounters we were having. They're very stealthy, very elusive, very fast. I can't begin to tell you how fast they are, the way they move. No, I wouldn't shoot at them. I think they're more like a people than they are an animal out in the woods.
Well, it's like an ultimate, it's like an ultimate question that gets a lot of debate about whether just one at least should be shot so we identify a species.
We just had that debate this last weekend. Scott and I did at a conference we had in Oklahoma. They got booed off, I'll tell you, for the most part. It's a series called Killing Bigfoot. And really, they said, you just about have to kill one, bring it in for science to accept them. And I said, no, you don't. There's so much anecdotal evidence now and you got DNA. There's all kinds of things that you can pull out of the wind now, or pull out.
All right, well, I'm going to play this number one again, and Scott, we should be listening to this kind of like you'd listen to a husband and a wife.
Sure.
Possibly in a minor dispute. I guess I'll put it that way. Okay, here we go. I get it. It does sound like she won, and he wasn't real happy about it. He was sort of walking away grumbling.
We kind of think, Art, that they were maybe having a confrontation over some food we left out.
Oh, that could be it.
Originally, we thought the sounds were towards us. The aggression was towards us, and they could have been towards us, but we were leaving food out, our leftovers. That's what originally got them started coming in. It's a family of them up there in the Sierras.
What did you leave for them?
Originally we were leaving Spam. We'd fry Spam and leave it out. But whatever food we took in, they would take. And anywhere from, if we took canned stew up there on our mules or something, we would use that. Whatever we had out is what they would generally take. Until one time we left some rotten meat out, basically. At that time we thought they'd eat about anything like a bear would. But
right.
We had just dug a hole earlier that summer and had some fresh mound of dirt, and left that bad meat out, and they took it and buried it under that dirt. And I have a picture. There's a big handprint over that mound, and underneath that handprint was the meat that we'd left out.
I see. Scott, if you had the opportunity to go along with Ron up into the deep woods where you're liable to encounter these creatures, would you go, or would you wait for the tape?
I've gone, actually, me and my son, Stephen, have gone up several times with Ron.
Really?
And several times Ron and I have gone up by ourselves. We've had quite a few interesting adventures, you could say.
Any of them involving Bigfoot?
Yes, a few. We had some. We've had things thrown at us. We've had strange sounds around the camp. Ron heard a morphine stream in the middle of the night, which we were unable to record. Oh yeah, there's a lot of activity up there.
I have a very famous Bigfoot scream that Linda Moulton Howe recorded. I'm sure you guys have heard it, right? Hmm? Is that a yes?
I don't know. I've heard the scream. I've heard a lot of screams.
I'll dig it out. It's a blood-curdling scream. There's no question about that. Are Bigfoot capable of big, blood-curdling screams?
I believe so. Yes.
Oh, I'm quite certain they're just from the evidence that we have to assume that their lungs are just massive. The resonance of their utterances is just off the scale. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a measurement of the biggest well, I don't want to say the biggest Bigfoot, but the average height of a Bigfoot? Is there any way to make a guess at that?
There really isn't. Depends if they're a young one or not, or just I have reason to believe there's some that are 12 foot tall.
Wow.
We had prints up there, 9-inch prints along with 18-inch prints. So I think that was an adolescent and its mother. And this huge one that we never found it right in camp because I think this thing is just so big it just can't stand behind one of those trees. But it had a 25.5-inch track, the biggest one. I didn't talk about this one for a long time because the distance between the tracks were 13 feet, and that's just, you got to do the math on that. We followed it till we couldn't follow it anymore, off into oblivion there. But it was just quite remarkable how something so big can still remain so hidden.
Yes, it is. Some would say impossible, but maybe not impossible. Ron, you're actually up in Bigfoot country, right?
I am. I'm on the Olympic Peninsula now. I live in Washington State.
How about you, Scott? Where are you?
I'm in Missouri, which is also Bigfoot country.
Okay. And somehow East Texas. I don't know why, but it seems like a lot of reports in East Texas. All right, you guys, I want you to listen to this. This is reportedly the real thing. It does come from Linda Moulton Howe, who investigates this kind of thing. And this is the sound that she came up with. Listen. There you have it. At a distance, recorded at a distance, obviously, but boy, that doesn't change the tone of that at all. Yikes!
Yeah.
Any reactions?
I have heard. I've heard that sound actually, and I've heard other sounds very similar to it. It's hard to say what it represents. If you can't see the source occasionally or see some evidence of the source, you don't really know. It sounds like maybe one is, I believe some of those screams back and forth are maybe a mother looking for its young, or a male looking for a mate, or that may have been just trying to induce the dogs that I heard barking too. I've heard them up in our area screaming out at a distance and you'd hear a bunch of coyotes off in the distance.
Yes.
The coyote sound. As Scott mentioned, one thing they don't hide is the amplitude. The sheer volume in which they can speak will blow your head off just about. It's so loud, especially when they're close to you.
Now, my comment would be, whatever it represents, I don't want to see it. Now, Scott, listening to that, after hearing other sounds of Bigfoot, what do you think?
Well, the resonance is certainly consistent with the Sierra creatures. It sounds legitimate to me.
Right.
I've heard, again, like Ron, I've heard similar sounds like that, and I didn't hear anything that would be linguistic in that. No. But it sounds like the same creature to me.
Would you say not linguistic, surely, but is that indicative of excitement, pain, mating?
Oh, what? Of course. Well, you never know. It could even be indicative of some ritual.
A ritual?
Oh, sure. It could be some. Well, like Ron said, it could be some mating ritual. It could be some other ritual.
Could be the conclusion of a mating ritual.
Yeah.
That's one reason you don't want to mimic these sounds, because you don't know what they're saying.
No. Any of you outside right now playing this radio into the darkness, think about what you're doing.
I have a lot of people wanting to blast my sounds, blast these sounds, and I don't suggest that at all because we don't know what they what they do mean, and again,
or what it might bring.
It might bring them something they don't want.
That's right. Northern California, obviously, with the big trees and everything, but what other big hotspots are there, in your opinion?
Me? Well, this is a hotspot on the Olympic Peninsula. I'm involved in the Olympic project here somewhat, and they have a lot of stuff going on there. I've met other people here. You just put the word out that you're involved in Bigfoot, and it seems like people start coming to you.
Right.
Yeah, I saw one here, and da-da-da. And I've had officials come to me, actually sheriffs and outside forestry workers, and they see them.
A lot to do on the show. Ron Morehead, who is a author, adventurer, and renowned researcher, Bigfoot researcher, is with us, as well as Scott Nelson, who is, believe it or not, a crypto-linguist. This guy has a lot of experience with the U.S. Navy. Went to the U.S. Navy's cryptologic voice transcription school, Russian and Spanish, and on and on and on. Knows about language and says that's what we're hearing here is language, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody comments on my computer. I call it the wormhole. They send messages. He said, "Yup, like most couples, I think the wife was doing most of the talking." So reaction we got. So let us move on to yet another recording, and I guess were most of these recorded at the same place, or these are all different?
All these were recorded at the very same camp. Some of them were months apart, some were years apart. This went on from 71 through 76.
Interesting. What about, is it harder to get these kind of sounds in the modern day than it was then?
Oh, yes. It seems like it is. At least it has been for me. I really sometimes go up there without a recorder. I want to find out more about them now, and because I think they are tuned into human exploitation, I try to just go up there simple, let them create the action if there's going to be any.
Right.
You can't be the antagonistic up there. You got to let them be the aggressor. If they're going to interact with you, they will. And if they're not, they seem like they choose who they want to interact with. So getting more sounds has just been very difficult. But I know they're there.
All right. Well, I'm going to play this next one, and then again we'll talk about it and come back and then perhaps play it yet again. Here we go. I think. Very different. I don't know where to start. What do you think we were hearing there?
You want me to chime in on that?
Yeah, sure. Anybody, anytime. I don't care.
I think, I give you that one because it sounds like they've got rhythm. The thing was really cold. It was a cold night, very cold. And he might have just been trying to stay warm. I don't know what the deal was. I thought I'd give you that one just because it's, I don't know what he was trying to do. Well, I don't know if you know, Scott. Right, have you analyzed that one at all?
All right, wait.
Well,
just wait.
Your tape, Ron?
Wait, before you start.
Okay.
That sound that we heard that was like, or clicking, or I can't duplicate the sound, but was that a sound produced by the creature, or was he banging on something?
I don't know. We didn't see him doing whatever he was doing. He was slapping, I think he was slapping on himself, or he might have been slapping on a rock. I don't know.
No, I don't think that was audible. That was not auditory. I don't think he was not producing that with his auditory tract.
Oh, okay. So you think that might have been a slap?
That's what I think.
Clacking of rocks or something besides a vocalization.
What about emotion or tone of that?
sure, there's always that.
Well, I mean, what do you make of it?
He's got that. Well, he's got a, he's still grumbling as he's doing that.
So maybe some kind of frustration.
Could be, sure.
This was one of the last sounds we recorded in 1972. The weather had moved in, was really cold, and again, the camp is 8,400 feet in elevation. It could have been they were leaving for the winter, because I do think they migrate down out. I don't know what it represents.
Okay, well, here it comes one more time. People can decide for themselves. That is a good recording, though. Really a good recording. That's what's shocking me about these. Usually if we talk about UFOs, we get very fuzzy pictures. And here we're getting very clear audio, as though the person recording would have to have been pretty close. Yes?
Well, we were close. They were close to us. We were inside the shelter during this time. Every time we'd go out, they would stop. And so we had our mics stuck through the shelter was a bunch of logs laid up against a cable and a group of trees. So you basically stuck your mic in there and hoped they came that way. We all were recording, though. I think this guy was just trying to learn how to play drums.
We mentioned encounters earlier, and there are people, unlike me, who want an encounter. They would like to encounter a Bigfoot. Do you have any advice on the best way to proceed if you really want an encounter?
I do. In fact, I have a whole list of things that seems to work, and people who try them say they work.
Proceed.
First of all, they got to be the aggressor. You can't make something happen with them. You got to wait and hope they interact with you. And you got to be habituated in an area for a long time, so they trust the area. Let me get my list out here. I can be better at it.
That sounds right. I mean, I'm thinking back to the lady.
Be sincere, be sober, so you know what's going on. Take notes, get a relaxed atmosphere, and just have fun. If they start clacking rocks or doing something out around you, and you think it's them because you're in a hot spot, because there are hot spots, and just relax and don't try to shine lights. Whatever you do, don't shine a flashlight out there.
Why?
They will leave in a heartbeat. Okay. And just, I got a lot of tips on my website, bigfootsounds.com. And if they want an interaction, but when we get through this tonight, they may not want the interaction they think they want now. I have some sobering things that I believe that you may not want the interaction.
All right, well, here's a question for you, both actually. Mm-hmm. They are so they are associated more than not many times with UFO sightings. Do you think, either one of you, that there is a paranormal aspect to them?
I've come to believe that there is, yes. Based on all the evidence I've found over 40-some-odd years of researching this, and what I've found in our camp, too. There's been some very strange things happen in our camp besides just these vocalizations.
Oh.
We've had lights following us around. I've seen a control light come down, which I don't know if it was unidentified to me, but it was controlled, big blue light. Come down close to our camp and just get lost behind the trees. Really? There's been sounds that we don't quite know how to interpret. There was a time when we were in our shelter, we heard what we thought our camp was being torn apart. Metallic sounds like the cans and everything we packed in on our mules were just being tossed around everywhere. We had barrels up there being banged on. But we look out there thinking we're going to see a mess, and nothing's been disturbed. I mean, nothing has changed. And how does that compute? It's either mass hypnosis or you're hearing into another dimension that you don't see. Something, I guess you can call it paranormal, because that certainly wasn't normal. Mm. And there's been in the daytime, you hear a big tuning fork sound, like there's a huge spaceship right over your head, but you're not seeing anything, but you hear it. And it's just things like that happen. We've heard clicking noises we don't know what to make of.
Right.
That follow us around. And, I think there's something different going on with these things. And I've got my ideas. I've been all over the world studying these things, down in Peru mostly, and that's where it really put me over the edge because I found some things that are not human down there. And UFOs are commonplace in Central and South America.
All right. For Scott.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Scott, what is this that in your mind, after all your study, absolutely makes this a language? What parts of it say this is a language?
Well, first off, the Morehead tapes display virtually every characteristic of human language that there is. The most important being, again, the conversational turns between two creatures, taking turns, speaking to each other back and forth, the repeating of morphemes, or what we might call syllables or minimal words.
Right.
Between the two of them. Exactly the way humans do.
Right, I heard it in that first recording without question.
Absolutely. Yep.
Is that
there's just too many characteristics of language evident in the tapes that it's undeniable. It's undeniable anymore.
All right. One question for you, Scott, is how do you know these tapes are real? And actually, have you been there when they were recorded, or
no?
Then how do you know they're real?
Well, that's one of the things. That was one of the three conclusions I came to immediately upon hearing it. That's what blew me away so quickly. Is that I spent a whole career listening to the human voice on tape, and I had been trained in every method of deception possible.
Right.
I was a Russian analyst, so and the Russians were the best during the Cold War. The Russians were the best, and I was trained in every deceptive method that the Russians used. And when I first heard these, my first impression was that even the Russians could not have faked these, especially not in 1974.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't know that they'd already been, analyzed by a sound expert, Dr. Curlin from the University of Wyoming, and he had already proven that the tapes could not have been faked.
There are, I believe,
professional experience.
Right. There are, I believe, certain ways to prove if something has been either created with a program or modified with a program.
Absolutely correct.
Whether it's an original recording or not. So, right. Yeah, I'll buy that. All right, let's move on to number 3. And again, recorded roughly in the same place or what?
Same place. Uh-huh.
Same place. Number 3, here we go. I think.
Come on now.
Wow. Pretty cool. Very different. Very cool. So that was kind of almost a whistle?
It was a whistle. That was one of the first exchanges we actually had. That was Warren Johnson whistling back to it. Okay. We found out that whistling, actually, they do is done through the vocal cavity. It wasn't done through the lips like we normally whistle. So that was kind of unique. That's why I sent you that one. And anyway, it was just one of the first exchanges we actually had, which I recorded. And I thought that
How do I know the difference between the Bigfoot whistle and, did you say Warren?
Warren Johnson, yeah, he's the one that whistled. Well, I can hear it. I don't know if you can. It's kind of a background whistle back, but it sounds like a human whistle.
That's why I'm playing them twice. Because
or through the vocal cavity, according to Dr. Curlin.
Gotcha. Again, here it comes again, and that's why, because I want you to listen to what's Warren and what's Bigfoot. Here we go.
Come on now.
Okay, that time I could go Warren, Bigfoot, easily.
Yep.
Got it. Got it. So is whistling, it's a form of communication, obviously, but I mean, it's part of their language, Scott?
Well, we don't know yet. It's certainly not language articulated in the same way that humans do, which most of their utterances are. But we don't know. I mean, certainly humans communicate with whistles as well. But
yes, they do.
Not linguistically. I mean, not articulated, by the same apparatus that we do.
Yes, we do communicate with whistles, it's true.
Sure.
They seem to have a very, very flexible vocal cavity, a vocal range. Dr. Curlin's report showed their range. They can go above, in, and below what a human can do, which gives the suggestion they can mimic almost any forest animal if they wanted to. And I know I've heard an 800-pound owl up there one time, and I never saw an 800-pound owl.
Now, Sasquatch lives at least, I don't want to say near humans, but frequently around humans. And so you have to wonder if their language, such as it is, has been affected in any way by what they've heard from human beings.
You want me to take that, Ron?
Yeah, you're the expert on that.
We'd have to assume that they are influenced by other languages the same way that humans are. And especially because virtually all Bigfoot researchers believe that they are so observant and so elusive that they are able to hide. They could keep themselves hidden and be very observant of our languages, and it would serve them very well to know specific words that humans use,
right? Like
food and guns,
right?
And hunt or whatever. You would think that they would make it their business to figure out what we mean by specific morpheme streams.
Do you think, going back to Ron for a second, Ron, that these are creatures that were here long before man, or do you think these are creatures that have always been? I don't know how to ask the question. How long have they been around?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Good answer. You don't know, say I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's better. Is there any indication that they are getting either closer to contact with humans or moving away from it more and more?
They're multiplying. I'm quite sure of that. They don't need protection like a lot of people think. We got to kill one so you can protect them. That's ridiculous. But they are multiplying. There are small ones being seen. What they are and why they're here, because they still stay hidden from man. They don't come out and expose themselves to humans unless it's by accident.
Right.
They're bigger, stronger, very stealthy. They're cognizant beings, and at least the ones I dealt with are cognizant, and that tells me something. They have language. Why are they here? And what are they doing? Why are they holding back? If they could trust anybody, they should be able to trust me. I've never threatened them. I've been up there, and I've been up there and had them around me, and yet they won't come out and shake my hand or tell me more about them so I can discuss this with the world like I'm doing now. I just want to know more, and I think I'm learning more as I go. I hope to, anyway.
All right, well,
none of us know everything.
All right, that's right. Here's one for you. We've discussed this on the show recently about whether, for example, a human being, do you have the ability to know when somebody is staring at you? You probably think you do, but I had someone tell me, a doctor, the other night, that you don't. I disagree with that. I think that you do know when somebody's staring at you. And moreover, I also think you know when a threat is close to you, unless you're really dense and you've been playing too many computer games and you're so out of touch with the world that you don't feel it. But, there's this thing with the hunter, and sort of just before the trigger gets squeezed or the bow and the arrow lets go, the buck suddenly raises up and knows something's about to happen. So what do you think?
I think it's a process called quantum entanglement. And I seriously, that's my term for it. I think within every human being, we have the ability to perceive things, and that's through the pineal gland. And if it can catch the vibration, if you can communicate with each other that way, telepathically, I think animals sense things like that. And I believe what you're saying, that an animal can, if you entangle it, and these things can entangle you. There's these creatures, these Bigfoot creatures. I've been entangled by them, paralyzed basically, not out of fear, just basically could not move. Me and Warren Johnson.
I say this because if they have a way to sense danger, then maybe they also, are relaxed, and when you're around, they sense that you're not a threat, and so they make sound, even though you got guns.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure if they thought we was going to shoot at them, or they wouldn't have done what they did with us up there. And I don't know why they did. I don't know why we were chosen. We didn't realize how unique what we had going on was at the time. We just thought we were having fun with it, basically. And you might be able to tell that from some of the interactions we've had. But Al Berry, the investigative reporter that went in 72 and recorded some of these sounds you're hearing, he was doing a job. He thought it was a hoax at first. He couldn't believe the story. And he interviewed us all. We finally agreed to let him go in. And he was looking for a hoax for so long. I didn't even know it. I thought he was up there as part of the group. But he was going through our bags when we were out walking around. He was trying to find a hoax. Couldn't believe it. What kind of story did he write? Well, he wrote a book, a Bantam book in 1978, I think it was, 76 it was, about our up there. And he ended up believing it inside, but still the science in him wanted to not believe it because of the strangeness that were going on around. How could these things not leave more evidence besides their tracks? We had a man go up there, a wildlife biologist, to do a flora fauna study, just at the suggestion of a scientist, to see if there was any evidence of any nails in a tree or speaker wires in the ground or anything like that. And we stayed up there 3 days, he and I did, and he did a thorough research. I wrote about this in my book, Voices in the Wilderness, and give his report in there, at least in part, because I didn't want to give away the location. But he couldn't find any evidence of something like that. Of course, we knew it wasn't happening, but again, we're 8 miles back in the wilderness, and it's quite an imposing trip. It's not like a walk in a park. You can get hurt up there. That's right. Well, Scott, going again back to that first recording, which was really awesome, and seemed like a talk between, or an argument even, between a man and a wife, have you identified in any of the recordings fear? Fear.
In them?
Yes.
In the creatures, not that I would have made a notation of. That it seems that whenever you're doing a transcription like this, the analyst, should make a notation of any emotions that he feels are being expressed. And I didn't I did not make any notation that would describe fear in them.
All right. Well, might have been a little fear in the male's voice after getting raked up and down by the female. All right, we've got another recording here. This is called Rocks 2, whatever that means. That me? Can I say something about that? Yep, please. Yeah, it's basically what they do when they first come around. They will crack rocks, they will whoop, they will make sounds like that to, I think, as a code to another one. Again, if the people who are wanting the encounter just sit still, they will come closer and do more. Okay. This is the sound you hear, the big cracks and the rhythmic rock popping, basically, that they announce themselves with a lot of times. Right. If I hear the sound of cracking rocks, I'm gone real quickly. Because whatever can crack rocks can certainly do something like that to skulls. Here we go. Listen carefully. actively cracking rocks. Holy moly. I don't know what to say about that. It sounded like big rocks, too.
You know, I might say this. The man we took up there, Joe Hauser, who is outside, he's a survivalist, he's a wildlife biologist, very qualified, and he found a batch of rocks over behind a huge outcropping that were not indigenous to the area. It was a pile of rocks, which I had never noticed before. None of us had. And they were brought from the river way down below, 8 miles trek. No one hauls rocks up there, believe me, but they were not from there. And we've often wondered were those rocks that they were pounding together that night.
Yeah. Holy moly. I guess, Scott, in that, not a lot for you to decipher, huh?
No, unless, that we have to assume that there's some meaning in there's some purpose as to why they would clack the rocks in that way. So there has to be some meaning, but not necessarily linguistic.
Well, communicative possibly, but not linguistic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right, yeah, right.
What about you, Ron? Any guesses about what rock cracking might mean?
I think it's a code. They're talking to each other or without vocalizations. They're sending messages to each other, because they'll do that also with whooping sounds, that'll be the next one you play probably.
Right.
But the whooping sounds have different intonations, and they're not directed at the humans that are present, I don't believe. And they are meant to some type of a signal to another one. And it isn't until they get past that stage that they start making their sounds.
Okay, in this rock cracking audio that we have, is it one creature, you believe, cracking these rocks, or is it are we hearing a communication back and forth? Are there two creatures involved?
You're hearing two. There was two. There was back and forth. They were from different directions. I recorded that night, and that's the night I actually got to see one. And you'd have one over here and then another one a couple hundred feet away. And they were either hitting rocks or banging wood.
Were they covered in fur?
Well, it was...
The one you saw, I'm sorry.
Well, I'd call it hair, but
hair.
I can't tell you that. It was dark. There was a bright moon out, so it's just as you see in the dark figures, you don't know really what they're like. I mean, I couldn't give you a definitive description of what I saw. Just that it was very fast. It was moving between the trees. My friend got to see one at a different time that same night.
Really?
And they were interacting with them because they were so bold. This was one of the first nights, actually, that they ever was this bold while we were outside the shelter.
Okay.
Very unusual.
Yeah, one more time here. Bigfoot communicating with each other with big rocks. We'll be back with what rocks we have in a moment.
To call the show, please dial 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952-CALL-ART.
Well, all right, I've got two guests, unless you count the recordings, and then that'd be Mr. Foot. I've got Ron Morehead, who is an investigator, 40 years, more than 40 years now, actually, looking for and recording Bigfoot. Then I've got something very special, Scott Nelson, who for 35 years has been a crypto-linguist, and he finds language in what he hears. And if you heard the first recording, which I'm going to find a way to make sure you do, before we go tonight, you're going to agree with that. I mean, it's language. I don't think there's any question about it. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You mentioned that we're going to hear some whoops, as it were. Again, recorded, what? Same place?
Same place. All these were recorded in the same camp.
Place. Okay. But same place, different day.
Different day. Well, some of them different day. Yeah, the first two were the same day. Well, no, I can't say that either. We've got a lot of recordings, Art. All of us are recording. I've got hours of this stuff.
Really?
I just pulled out these that give you kind of a
sample,
basically of different.
You have hours of this, really?
Yes. They were coming in quite regularly for us. We would leave food out, and again, we weren't threatening them, and I think that we just got lucky.
Okay, then let me ask Scott, if there are hours of this, Scott, you've heard a lot more than we have.
Yes.
So, in hours, how many times did you hear the kind of apparent dialogue that we heard in that first recording?
Oh, throughout.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
We really are dealing with something here.
Yeah, we have 75. I mean, it took me 4.5 months initially to transcribe all of the three tapes, the two Barry tapes and Ron's tape. Just about 90 minutes. It took me 4.5 months to transcribe, to do it right. We have 75 pages.
Holy moly. All right, here come the whoops, folks. We'll listen very carefully. Here it comes. 1, 2, 3. Ooh, good one. Is that two separate creatures, I presume, or I think?
It was a night when there were 3 of them in camp.
3?
3 creatures, yeah. And so we had a lot of whoops that night. It was right after the rock popping, actually, that you heard last session we had here. But the whooping was, I think, between a couple of them back and forth and different intonations. I got different whoops than just those, but those are 2 kind of unique.
I thought they were good. Scott, any emotion that you can attach to whoops? I mean, is it a way of one attracting or another, or just letting you know I'm here, or what do you think?
I would assume that it was something like that. I would assume it's something locational or something like that. I didn't sense much emotion in that, but certainly some purpose to it.
Maybe location. All right.
Almost sounds like sonar blips.
It almost does, huh?
It could have been trying to draw us out, too, with the rocks, just to see what we're going to do. Because Bill and I, my friend who was there with me, we just ridden in with our horses and started getting dark when all this started happening. And
you had horses with you?
Yes.
Oh, I'm curious. How did the horses react to these sounds?
They were paralyzed, just frozen. They don't scuttle or nothing. They just stand there still. Their ears are pointed right out towards where these sounds are coming from.
I bet.
But it didn't seem to bother them like bear. When bear come around our camp, which we got a lot of bear up there, they would fuss a lot, but they didn't fuss when these things were around. In fact, when we'd go out, sometimes we'd go out walking in the daytime, just hiking or something, and a horse would leave our horses there, and we'd come back and find some big Bigfoot prints around our horses where they came in and examined our horses.
I had no idea, Ron, that you had so much more than what we're hearing tonight. I assumed you have hours and hours of it. Wow.
Yeah, we do. A lot of it, and a lot of it, actually, Scott don't even have, because it's just not the quality that we gave him the best quality we had. And there was times when they didn't come in close to the mic. It was kind of more of a distance, maybe the mic was pointing one way and they were on the other side of the shelter or something.
Right.
So these are some of the better quality ones we had. But yeah, this went on for. That's what makes it so interesting, because it went on for not just one or two times. It went on for years. And
all right.
it's still
Now,
going
the
on
next
even
thing,
today.
we could go on and on about this, but even with a 3-hour show, we're pressed a little because I want to allow callers and stuff like that. So the next one says Vocal Exchange 2. So is this kind of like the first one we heard, only different?
No, this is between me and one of the creatures. It's not between two of the creatures. It's one of them trying to get my attention, and I was mocking it, or mimicking it, I should say. Or it was mimicking me. I'm not sure which way it was going. You'll hear it.
So that is a successful tactic in trying to get them going, is to make noise yourself?
Well, no, they were, I think, intentionally trying to attract me, and I yelled at them, and it's basically they came back at me with a yell of their own, and I tried to mimic that.
You were fairly sure it wasn't a mating call, right?
I wasn't thinking about it at the time, or I might not have done what I did. But it was an exciting night, I'll tell you that.
All right, Vocal Exchange 2, here it comes. I think. Yikes. For a good time, come to the 5th tree over the hill.
Yeah, I was having a good time that night.
Sounded like it.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I wish I knew what they were saying to me, what they were trying to say to me. Scott could never tell me that, though, till we get one of them to say, ooga, ooga, that's a tree. You don't know what they're trying to say.
No, you don't.
You notice the difference in the sound, though, from the first one that you heard.
Absolutely,
It wasn't quite as rapid sounding. And Scott, I had a question for him years ago. Was it the same vocal mechanism, or the same creature made that sound as made the ones in the 71, 72 tapes? And he said, yeah. And so what we think and what he thought is that it slowed its articulation down to perhaps something they thought was communicatable to us. And that's very exciting to me to think they actually did that.
Means they're trying to communicate.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's communicating, yeah.
All right, we're going to do this one again. Listen very carefully, everybody. And you can tell which one is Ron very easily. That must be something to be out there, and you can tell that you're getting them going.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about that. I mean, it worked. So
the whole night has quite a story behind it. Again, I write about that in my book, but they knew who we were. They evidently saw us come in at the bottom when we packed our animals to head up there, and they knew where we were going. We found a huge track on the trail after our animals had got spooked. We wasn't sure what it was. Could have been a bear, could have been a deer, could have been anything, but we saw this big track sometime later perpendicular to the trail.
Right.
So we thought, well, okay, they're still around. It's fresh. No one else at all. And after so far, you don't leave a trail. You go different ways, so we didn't leave a trail. But when we got to camp, as soon as it started getting dark, so when we started hearing the rocks going together there and the whooping, and then the interaction just heard and some more besides that. But we found a huge track in front of our shelter. The next morning, actually. We knew it was made before we got there because Bill's dust cover off his rifle had fell into the track and it hadn't been crushed down. It was just tilted up on the track. So that track was made before we got there. But that's not the end of the story. Earlier that year, we had re-roofed the shelter with some fresh plastic, cut some with a machete, cut some vines off over at the spring, some alders, put it up on top of the shelter. They were pretty dried up by the time this came around, and there was next morning we found 2 fresh alders been twisted off of the spring and laid up there. Mm-hmm. And these we found where they were actually twisted off. They were 1.5 inches round. No human could do that, but it took an opposable thumb to make that happen. What strength they got to have. But that's kind of like they knew we were coming, where we were going, and that's sentiency.
Yes.
Pretty smart.
Why?
They were happy to see us.
Right. Everybody always asks, and I'm getting messages on my computer called the Wormhole, why no bones? Why no bones? Why no remains? Are they, do they live forever, or what?
Well, the native lore is that they take care of their own. If they're like a people, like I think they are, they probably bury their own, assuming they die, we don't find bones of a lot of animals. If anything lays around in the woods very long, it gets consumed. Nature takes care of itself. It does. So it's not so unusual to not find bones.
Okay. Somebody else said, well, you saw one, and they asked, can you describe in any way the face of the creature?
No, I can't. It was just fast. I remember that. It was just extremely fast. No human could go through the woods that fast. Right. It was a bright moonlit night. By the time it got dusk and started getting dark, it really wasn't dark. You could read a newspaper at 8,400 feet in those mountains. And it was so bright, the moon was. That's why we got just looks of them bouncing between the trees.
I sure don't know any animal that makes a sound like we've been hearing.
No.
Well, no, just a Bigfoot.
Scott?
And I'm not sure all Bigfoots talk.
And humans.
Well, I don't know about humans. Some of those sounds I would not ascribe to a human.
Yeah, right.
Certainly not that first one we played. That was incredible. All right, we have one more new sound to play, and I think time to play it, yes. So let's do that. You want to say anything about this, or should I just...
Well, I think this is a question that they're asking me, and I don't know what they're saying, but it just sounds, the intonation is like they want me to say something to them. And I call it the question. They call it question because it's just, it's always puzzled me as what they were asking me, and I don't know what it was, and I thought it was kind of unique, so I gave it to you.
All right, here it comes. Wow. Yes. You could almost hear almost an inquiry. Maybe one of the sounds you made them respond in that way, trying to ask you a question, huh?
I think so. I don't know what, but we were just, again, when they started off that evening, we just ignored them. That's how you get them to come in. And we were just, we had a stove fire going. We packed a stove up there years before and assembled it after it got up there on mules. But we were just there, had built a fire, basically had our horses out, and when these things started doing all this stuff, we got our little recorders out of our saddlebags and set them up and started recording the things. But it was an exciting evening, and that's the evening that we both got to get glimpses of them. My daughter, all the guys have just about all of them, except Barry, got to get glimpses of these things. My daughter has seen some really clearly, and she described it as a 7-foot tall. When it turned, it doesn't turn it turns its whole body. They don't seem like they have a neck. They got to have a neck, but they don't turn their neck.
Did she get close enough to see a face?
Yeah. She described it. She looked like just a big black basketball player.
Really?
They have a very human-like face from all the reports. I've been interviewing people now for all these years. And
right.
They have a very human-like expressions on their face. And, I have reason to believe that they are part human. And,
okay.
I don't know about the language thing, if they all have language or not. But I think they're...
Well the ones you've been around certainly seem to.
These have language. You know that.
All right.
Well, the nature of language would say that if species wide, if one clan has language, it would essentially be species wide.
Huh. Okay. All right, gentlemen, hold tight. Here we go. One more time.
Right there, just seen moving right through there.
All right, so now here's what we're going to do, folks. We have two experts with us, one an investigator, the other a linguist, a crypto-linguist at that, and a lot of experience with Bigfoot between them. So, if you have questions about what you've heard, by all means, I'm going to open up the lines. We're headed shortly into a break, but I'm going to open up the lines. Our public number is, you would dial a 1 and then area code 952-225-5278. Again, area code 952-225-5278. Now, if you have Skype on your iPhone 6, your Android, whatever it is, if you don't have Skype, download it. When you get it, just go to the add a contact part, and if you're